First, let me start by thanking Nancy for inviting me to this meeting. I was here 25 years ago, and I hope to be here in 25 years for the next commemoration. I'll try to speak today a bit on this new center, in fact, a new paradigm of the Orthodox Foundation. But before that, I'll have to speak a bit on the change in Brazil in the last years, because this would help understanding what's going on in the country and our institution. So let me start something about the last decade, and let me stress not the lost decades, because in the 80s and 90s, Brazil had to face lost decades, where we had the International Monetary Fund always present, telling us what to do, what we should not do. I think this now is over. In fact, now it's a very optimistic scenario, but I'm not going to speak myself. Let the economist speak for us. One of the most important things that happened in Brazil was not only that it became a richer country, but because mostly the fighting of poverty. Recently, Brazil really did overtake Britain as the sixth largest economy in the world. But I would say the most important is in this next slide, where you see the decrease in poverty. Something like 30 million people moved to middle class, to the despair of the very rich. They say now we cannot travel because the planes are full of people. We cannot drive in the streets are full of cars. So it's a country which is really booming, and in fact was this new consumer market that helped us a lot in the 2008 crisis. You see here on the left side of the slide the decrease in poverty, in the right side the increase in GDP. This was not something that came from one day to the other. This book, which you can download for free on the internet by a British author, Christine Baum, made a careful analysis of the changes in the legal framework in Brazil and some of the major steps that the government took since the year 2003-2004 to bring the country to a new position. And in relation to this meeting, this was everything taken from that book. So it's, I would say, independent source. In 2004, the Congress of Brazil, after 8 years of discussion and pressed by President Lula, approved the Innovation Law, which I would say is equivalent in the United States of the Bayh-Dole Act. Some 25 years late. So Bayh-Dole is in the 1980s, but at least it came. And this it's still not a perfect law, but it changed quite a lot. Until this law, public institutions should not interact with the private sector. Nowadays, it's much easier. Then in 2005 came the good law, it's called Lei do Bem, good law, which creates a series of mechanisms to support scientists that would like to go and work in the private sector, with fellowships and other mechanisms. In 2007, the federal government started a program called Program for Accelerated Growth, Programa de Aceleração do Crescimento. You have one program for health, one for science, several programs, but it's a huge investment by the federal government. In 2008, there is now this productive development policy, and now until 2014, we have the Plano Brasil Maior, the plan Brazil Bigger Country, which it's always available in the internet. This graph shows the increasing budget of the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation in the latest, since 2000. This more or less reflects almost all over the ministries, but for this meeting, I think this is an important number. So also there was some financial innovation, as Ken was speaking this morning. One financial innovation is this new program called the National Institutes on Science and Technology. To fund this program, several ministries and also industries and local foundations for support of research put money in a single pot. And this allowed us, as scientists, to have grants which in general were 20,000, like TDR grants, 20, 50,000. We have now grants for $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. This was a program evaluated, let's see, the applications went through two committees, one a Brazilian committee, one international committee. We had to submit proposals in Portuguese and in English. And out of some 400 applications, they selected 106 national institutes in all areas of knowledge. You can have in politics, astronomy, physics, oil, health. I got one in innovation on neglected diseases, which works out of Fiocruz. Fiocruz got 3 of these grants, one in Curitiba on diagnosis and public health, and one in vaccines in Belo Horizonte. But this, you have in the internet some English page on that. It's a very interesting program because it's very flexible. I got the money in a private bank account. I paid, for instance, one of the students, which does not belong to my institution. He is in Manaus, for him to take a 1-year course in the London school. So I just went to the bank and paid it. So it really came something much more flexible, which was something that went for a long time. Something which is very important, I would like to stress this for Colombia also, but also for other countries, is this new program called Science Without Borders. In Portuguese is Ciência Sem Fronteiras, Ciência Sem Fronteiras. This is a program launched by President Dilma in order to train Brazilians abroad and to invite scientists from abroad to come to Brazil. This program aims at 100,000 fellowships in 4 years. The initial idea was 75,000 paid by the Brazilian government and 25,000 by the private sector. As the private sector is still thinking what to do, President Dilma said, okay, if they don't put, we put what misses. But we would like the private sector also to come here. This slide I took from where they call the web TV of this program, where you can go there and hear all the call for applications, policy and so on. This is the already it started end of last year. This was a list of the first candidates approved. As you see, we have already candidates going to Argentina or Chile, or coming from Argentina or Chile, none from Colombia. I hope, Nancy, that perhaps in some months or years, we can also stimulate this interchange of people. And they have very, very nice kind of fellowships. Once, for instance, if one has a top scientist abroad, he or she can come to Brazil, let's say, every year for 2-3 months. But at the same time, we put in this program 1 or 2 students to work in the same project, plus something like $50,000 a year for each one to help the project. One person that I'm inviting, in fact, we are talking to him, is Hernando Portillo. He probably will come for 5 years to Manaus, 3 months every year. So it's a nice, very nice area for stimulating the change. Okay, but not everything is blue sky. We have a lot of challenges. And I think that this slide from a book of a Peruvian author, Francisco Sagasti, shows one of our main problems. The upper part of the slide pictures the situation of science, technology, and production in developed countries. You almost see no separation between science, technology, and production in the United States and Europe. But south of the equator, science, technology, and production are done by separate group of institutional people. Trying to put these different sectors together is one of the big challenges. And this is in the bottom of several of our problems. We are going to see that, for instance, This reflects in our trade. This graph shows the situation in Brazil. We are now spending something like 8, 9, 10 billion dollars a year in deficit in medical devices, pharmaceuticals, vaccines. Why? Because we are not producing, we are importing, let's say we are not using our knowledge to generate products. Now focusing a bit on Fiocruz. Some of you know Fiocruz, but most of you perhaps have never been there. We are an institution from the Ministry of Health. We were created in 25 May 1900, and this book by Nancy Stapleton was translated to Portuguese. Nancy Stapleton is an American writer. The book is not easy to find. It took me 2 years the Amazon to get the original copy, because the Portuguese translation only translated the text, did not translate the notes, so it's not as good. But it shows that Fiocruz was created. Why? Because there are so many public health problems that the economy was in bad shape. For instance, the ships that would go from Europe to Argentina, they would say, this ship does not stop in Brazil. It was too dangerous. One ship who did stop, something like 150 people died of yellow fever. So better be far from Brazil. So it was during that time that Brazil created this institution. So it was from the very beginning that science was done for a public health purpose. And this is a big difference in our institution. Nowadays, okay, we are 112-year-old, almost, next May. We are 11,000 people in 7 cities in Brazil, established 3 more in 3 other states, with a budget approaching 1.5 billion, not million, US dollars. And you can see in the left side of the slide, this is the article output, paper output according to the Web of Knowledge. It's approaching 2,000 papers a year in the best journals indexed by current contents. However, this also shows why the innovation law was so critical for us. This knowledge translates into papers, into students, into theses, but not translating products. On the right side, you see that although we have almost 2,000 papers a year, we have something in all our history, something like 80 patents. And out of these 8 patents, not so many products. I would say perhaps only one Chagas diagnostic kit is from bottom up, real product. So we try to change that. But even so, we have been considered one of the promising institutions. This was taken from Nature in 2009, saying that, well, there are good conditions these days in Brazil for us to move to another situation. I took this graph from a very interesting paper. Perhaps some of you know this paper by Kaitin, Deconstructing the Drug Development Process, where he shows the big problems that the big pharma is facing today, particularly because of the blockbuster patents are expiring. Only the Lipitor patent was generating $13 billion a year. Now it's almost zero because the patent expired. So there is a very, very big problem that they are facing. Also, the time of development we saw today, how long can take 15 years. Some people say 1 billion, 2 billion, 4 billion for a drug. So Kaitin proposes that one should work in network, should do open innovation, and should interact. And I think this graph is very nice. So when this graph came, in fact, we had our plans moving, but it was very nice to put them over this graph. So we decided to start this center, which I'm now directing this project. It's called the Center for Technology Development Health, which basically is going to focus on preclinical work. And we are going to work in this center on good laboratory practice. But another project, which is also under construction, is the Prototype Center for Testing and biologicals, biomolecules, and diagnostic prototypes. This air view, how they are in the country. This is in Rio de Janeiro. The CDTS is a complex of 3 buildings, and the prototype center is quite close. But if I can come back. So the idea is that these 2 centers will make the bridge between the research, the basic research, in Fiocruz or in any university, until production. We have a very nice production facilities, but sometimes we also collaborate with the private sector. And another project that is already approved by the budget, by the Congress this year, is a completely new vaccine production plant, something like $400 million. These two projects here, both together, go to something like $170 million. So it's a big investment from the Brazilian government. This is part of the program for accelerated growth. Well, this CDTS, I was taking a look at what Steve is doing. I think we are more or less in that same area, of course not as advanced and with so many people there, but the idea is that these 2 centers together will try to bridge this gap. Going quickly over the building, in the first floor we are just going to have, what I say, Nancy, is that the ground floor is TDR, because TDR was without labs. So CTS, TDR plus labs. So we're going to have, so in the ground floor we are going to have people doing analysis of projects, economic analysis, trying to see if a project has freedom to operate, if there is no patent preventing it, how much it will cost. So it's not going to be basic research. We are going to do careful analysis to see how many new items we can put in our portfolio. We are also going to have facilities for telepresence. I travel too much, so I try to do much more by video than traveling. And we are going to have facilities for small meetings. We have an auditorium for 150 people to be able to attract students and visitors. The second floor, technology platforms. We're going to have the usual suspects, genomics, proteomics, metabolomics, protein expression, monoclonal expression, and so on. But the big innovation is in this last floor. In the left part of the slide, as you see, it's free space. It's nothing there. This is going to be an area that we are going to invite industry, the private sector, to team with us in some specific product development. Imagine that we are in a stage that we want to have a new diagnostic kit, and we find a nice Brazilian or multinational industry that would like to operate with us. So we're going to offer them space. This is not going to be an incubator of enterprise or new industries. It's going to be an incubator of products in partnership between us and an industrial partner, which can be Brazilian, can be also international. One big problem when we started this project was how to attract people. Because, okay, we have almost 2,000 papers a year, we have most of the people that are there, but we still miss a lot of the brains needed. So when we thought the building would be ready by 2010-11, we issued a call for application in Nature and Science. Fiocruz paid the one in Science, and the Ministry of Education paid the call for application in Nature, $10,000 each. And in 2 months, we got something like 60 applications. This was more or less in that time, in 2006, 2007. Today it will be much more. But as you see, we've got candidates from United States, Germany, France, Belgium, Israel, Northern Ireland, Singapore, Italy, Canada, UK, Belarus, Sudan, Sweden, Thailand, China, and India. In blue was those that we consider good CVs and start to negotiate with them. But this showed us that it should not be a problem to attract people to our institution. I think it was sort of a proof of concept. I would say nowadays, if we issue the same mechanism today with the crisis that we have in Europe, in the developed economies, and the image that the emerging economies like Brazil have, I would say that we are going to attract many more. But so we did attract some people. but there was still some areas that were not strong enough. So we made a specific, that call for application, we put some emphasis in these areas. And in fact, last year we made a public competition for permanent positions. And we got 2 candidates approved for analoglycophosphatolipids. One Belgian candidate made it for bioinformatics, one Brazilian for HTS, one German guy for NMR, one for peptide synthesis from Brazil. No one was approved in the examination for physicochemical analysis. It was, we said, come on, I thought this would be an easy one. But the examination was too difficult, so we decided, okay, no one's okay, 0. We issue another one. And one from the United States on protein expression. Again, this was, let's say, starting the mechanism to see how we could do. We have to improve that. For instance, the Brazilian law did not allow us to make examination in Portuguese, in English. So these poor guys, they have to be trained in Portuguese. I said, well, they did. They did the written examination, the oral examination, and the CV presentation in Portuguese. So, but it's too much. It was too much. They could do that because they were there as fellows for 4 years. See, but this also has an advantage. In these 4 years, several came, and several did not enjoy, did not like, went back. So the guys who were approved, they were really tested. So, in fact, the government is wanting the Science Without Borders program, starting first with fellowships. Then, once you know you have good candidates, then you open permanent positions. Because it's almost impossible in Brazil to fire someone that became in the public service. So better to hire only those that you are sure enough. But anyway, the buildings are not ready, but the centers are already in full operation in the existing infrastructure. And this, for instance, a list of some of the partnerships that we are already implementing. For instance, with Guayagen, with ChemBio, with Glaxo, we have a big project to develop a dengue vaccine, which is a joint development project. For every euro that Glaxo puts, we put another euro. So I would say that the centers are already operating on a virtual basis, and they would be much better in a couple of years. So this is what I would have to show you. I hope that today and tomorrow during the panel we can discuss more of the goals and what we could do in cooperation with other countries. As you know, Brazil is doing a lot of emphasis in South-South cooperation. We have, I forgot to say that Fiocruz has now one office in Maputo, in Mozambique. So we are putting a lot of money in this kind of cooperation. And it would be a pleasure to have and strengthen cooperation with Colombia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Morel. ¿Preguntas?
Varios colombianos, yo creo que un buen número de colombianos ya han desarrollado sus estudios en Brasil a través de los años. Y Hernando del Portillo trabajó allá durante décadas,
Claro.
Que es el hermano de Patricia. Ahí está. Ese programa de fellowships podía permitir que ellos muevan entre Colombia y Brasil, por ejemplo, porque ya es decir, pueden ser como Pedro por su casa en los dos países.
Hay varias maneras, well, let me answer in English. There are several ways that one can participate in this program. There are some rules. In fact, but they are open to improve the program. For instance, they say that they prefer that people apply to the top universities. And they have put the list of the top universities done by international evaluators. See, for instance, if you are going to Harvard, Yale, Johns Hopkins, no problem there. If you go to Swiss Tropical Institute, which is in Basel University, number 25, that's okay. But for instance, I want to send people to GSK in Três Cantos, and they had not ranked industry. I wrote to them, look, I want to send people to be trained because we have collaboration with Glaxo in Três Cantos in Spain. So they're improving the program. People can enter, you can apply as a individual, or for the national institutes like myself, we got a quota of a number of fellowships, but we send them some list of names or positions we'd like to have. For I think I sent them something like 40, and they allowed us 25. So now we are sending this. But also, I would say that it's a two-way. You can, if you have contacts in Brazil, please start pressing them. So how can I participate in that? If CDI, because it's not a university, not in the list of ranking, there are ways to tell them, look, this is a very interesting institution, we like to send people. I think they are very open. They put this in order to prevent people going to places that would not be worthwhile sending people. But I would say with the background and the history of collaboration, I'm sure that Colombia, and again, Dilma is very much in favor of spreading collaboration not only to the usual suspects, but let's say South America, it's a top priority for us, as is Africa, particularly the Portuguese-speaking Africa.
¿Alguna otra pregunta para el doctor Morel?
Doctor, mi nombre es Alejandro Vargas, soy epidemiólogo. Estuve en Sao Paulo estudiando medicina tropical. Me gustaría que me hablara un poco sobre la negociación de las patentes con sus investigadores, porque en Colombia tenemos dificultad de negociar patentes con nuestros directores de centros de investigación. ¿Cómo lo hacen ustedes en Quito?
As I told you, our innovation law came in 2004. But when I was vice president of Fiocruz in the 80s, I convinced Fiocruz to start a tech transfer office. So our tech transfer office in Fiocruz was started in 86, decades before the law came. And at that stage, our president was Sérgio Aroca. Some of you know Sérgio Aroca. And Sérgio Aroca was someone that was affiliated to the Communist Party, but I would say to the soft line Communist Party. He was a very bright person. So you know Aroca. So one day I went to Aroca and said, Sérgio, we need to have a patent office in Fiocruz. Patent office in Fiocruz? You're crazy. Why? Well, how are you going to protect our own discoveries? There is no way. So he, very bright person, and he agreed, and we created an office there in 86. When I became president of Fiocruz, we discussed it a long time, and we signed an internal document saying that if there are any profit out of a patent, we are going to share these profits into 1/3 for the scientist, 1/3 for the department, 1/3 for the institution. So Fiocruz is much advanced in this area. We have all the let's say, the legal framework ready. When the law came, it's compatible. The big problem is to change the culture. Change the culture of the scientists, because they say, well, writing a patent takes too much time, we lose time. I said, well, if you have your paper ready to send publication, and then you try to write a patent, of course. But do both things together, there is plenty of time. Now we have, the thing is well structured, we have a commission that every month they meet to analyze what the scientists want to protect. And some are rejected, some are not rejected. We know it can be very expensive to keep a patent, so we are being more and more strict because we pay all the costs of patent. For instance, one of the patents I submit myself, we decided to go on to the United States. But when you book it in Japan, it's too much expensive. So there is no policy in the campus. But one of the people I sent to train abroad, I sent one of our tech transfer office staff to MIT. I know Lita Nelson, who is the director of tech transfer also of MIT, and I said, Lita, we have to train someone in licensing because we're making patents but we're not licensing. So Lita accepted, and we sent someone from she's a PhD she has a very nice paper on natural products in World Patent Journal. So she spent there 2 months with Lita. So we are trying also to improve the culture of intellectual property. And this is a critical issue in Brazil. To give you an idea, Fiocruz was responsible for making all the dossier that justified issuing the first computer license for Brazil. So it was Fiocruz who made all documentation showing that what Merck was doing with the 5 grams was not acceptable. And in, I think it was 2009, it was the first and only time that Brazil issued a computer license. And in the beginning it was, people thought this is going to be a catastrophe. Later on, including people from industry, told us, you did the right thing. Merck did not know how to negotiate. Everybody was giving us 30, 40%, and after 2 years discussion with Merck, they offered 2%. And we said, okay, I think you don't want to negotiate. So it's not the best solution. We had to do ourselves the drug at Fiocruz. So we had to release 1 floor for our factory and 1 year working, and we bought the API from the local sources, and it's done. Now we do it ourselves. But it's not the solution that we want. Always a good negotiation, much better than doing that. I want to make this clear, because some people say, well, Brazil is going to do compromise for everything. No, no. We are very strong supporters of the IP rights. In fact, Novartis is starting a vaccine factory in Northeast, an investment of $300 million. And one of the arguments the CEO told was strong patent protected by Brazil. So I think one can do both things. Coming back to your, I think change the culture of the universities is quite difficult. As Fiocruz started in the 80s, it was easier. But most of the universities, they don't have a tech transfer office, so it's ongoing, but it's improving.
Hay tiempo para una última.